Hey everyone, I'm Ian Douglas, the author of the website techinterview.guide. I do live streams every Sunday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern about topics relevant to interview preparation for the tech industry. I occasionally record longer Q&A sessions, and I've started to break those into smaller videos to post. And there'll be information at the end of this video about how to get in contact with me if you have additional questions. Let's get to it. What's the number one answer? Oops, let me go back to that. What is the number one answer you get from the interview question? What is your greatest weakness? This is one of those behavior questions where everybody expects to answer this question and people hate to answer this question. I think the whole, like, what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses are a little bit cliche nowadays. I think it's easy to sugarcoat, and the advice that you hear from a lot of people is like, never turn a weakness into a strength. Like the asking this question is really, really hard. I actually answer this question a lot more during reference calls than I do like asking this question in real interviews anymore. And so I would typically ask on a reference call, like, hey, we're thinking about hiring so-and-so. What would you say are like their biggest strengths or their biggest growth areas? And just kind of hear from the references, like what they would think. Whether or not they can answer those questions, whether or not they want to answer those questions, it's really up to them. But I've also done a lot of reference calls for people, and that one tends to come up a lot in reference calls too. So then I would say like the number one answer isn't necessarily like a helpful thing to know. Like, oh, like 60% of the people all say this one thing is their greatest weakness. When it comes to these kinds of behavior questions, they're really trying to get at like, what is your self-awareness? Like, do you even have self-awareness? Do you know that you have growth areas? Or what have you identified as a growth area? Or what have other people helped you identify as a growth area? How are you working on it? How are you overcoming that as a challenge? How are you not going to do it here? And I've talked about that on other streams before as well, where, for example, one problem that I had at a couple of jobs was I was always late to meetings. I would always think like, oh, well, the meeting room is literally like 10 feet that way or 30 feet that way. And so I'm just going to leave my desk like 30 seconds to spare because I just have to walk into the room. And I would get up from my desk and be like, oh, I need this and I need this. And should I take my laptop? Yeah, I guess I'll take my laptop. And I should probably bring a pen and a notebook and whatever. And by the time I collect all this stuff, the meeting's already started and the door's closed. And I got to like open the door and interrupt everything and find a seat. And it looks really unprofessional. And it kind of comes back to something else I've said on the stream where one thing that I was really taught, being raised, was being late is a sign of disrespect. Like you always want to be early for things. Like even showing up on time can sometimes be seen as disrespectful because, for me, the meeting is just getting started and I'm like walking in the door. You should be like in your seat, like prepared, ready to go when the meeting starts. Same thing with like Zoom calls and things like that. If you're working remote, like try to join that call a couple minutes early. If you're doing a remote interview, join a couple of minutes early if you can, so that you're there, you're ready to go, you're prepared, you have everything. So how I would answer a question, what is your greatest weakness? I would say, well, this is what I've identified over the years of something that I had a problem with. And it was brought to my attention from various people that I worked with, and it's not who I wanted to be. And so I started putting timers on my calendar 5 minutes ahead of time saying, hey, you've got a meeting, you need the following things. And so as soon as somebody would schedule a meeting, I would also schedule this 5-minute warning sort of thing of, you're going to need the following things for that meeting that you have. So that way I already knew what to sort of bring with me. And if I had a bunch of back-to-back meetings, I would, not bring like a backpack of stuff, but I would like try to bring everything that I would need for like all the back-to-back meetings. Sometimes it's a lot, but eventually I got to a point where even a lot of my note taking was digital. And so I didn't have to bring the notebook or the pen anymore unless I was like trying to sketch something out. But it would be something where like I was going into an architecture meeting and I knew I was going to have to draw something out, or somebody would be explaining something that I knew I was going to have to like draw out in my journal. And so just being really prepared for those things. So in a real interview scenario, I would want to talk about how I addressed it, or like how I identified it, how I've addressed it, and how I'm, sort of holding myself accountable going forward to not do that. because I don't want to give them the impression that, oh yeah, if you hire me and I come work for you, I'm also going to be late to all these meetings. That's not the impression that I would want to give. So, hey, thanks for watching. I love helping people out with interview prep, and I hope this video helped you in some way. If you found this Q&A useful, please consider subscribing. You can follow me on Twitch as well for the live stream twice a week. Check out techinterview.guide/streaming for more information. I also have a daily email series that you can subscribe to on the website. There are never any ads, and when you finish the series, I scrub your information out of my database permanently. Finally, if you have a question that you'd like answered on the stream, you can find my contact info on techinterview.guide. I prefer LinkedIn or email. If you leave your question in a YouTube comment, it might take me longer to find it, but I'll see you next time.